Okay, good morning. We are Hilchos Megillah, Ksivas Megillah, really. Tav Reish Tzadi Aleph. Okay, today we're going to start with Seif. Did we do Gimel? We did Gimel. We're starting with Dalet. I don't know if I said. So we have the custom we mentioned yesterday to have the columns of the names on top of each other and the Ve'es on top of each other. Two columns on each side. And so it's straight and from both ends, straight down, and it's not staggered like it is by the other, most of the other shiras, like we see by Azia Shir. And to the Chazal say, the reason is Shalot Tehei Tekuma to the Reshaim, that the Reshaim should not get up. So two basic pshatim is, just explaining the reason for it, is, right, and if we don't write it like that, so the Yerushalmi in the halacha is it's psula, the Megillah, and the reason is that it's given two explanations. One is if you have it staggered, so it's as if you're letting the enemy that's underneath the wall that you just built stagger, so it gives them room to move side to side and like wiggle out or get some rest or to escape. That's one pshat. The other one is if it's staggered, if you build a wall and you have the ends not straight or flush, and it's staggered, like one brick in, one brick out, one brick in, one brick out, then you can keep on adding to the wall by adding more bricks, fill in the gap, and just keep adding. And so that wall will get stronger. And what we wanted to do, but if you have a straight wall and you just add right next to it, it doesn't attach and interlock the same way, so it won't be as strong. Anyway, that's the reason for the that's given for the halacha. Okay, so in Daled we read Tzarich leharich bevav de vaizata, so that vav is extra long, and that's when you see a Megillah written that vav is extra long. That's what it needs to be. The ikar halacha is for writing. So the Rama writes b'chtivata. V'yesh omrim b'kriyata. And some say even when you read it, so the minhag is when you read it, you should preferably accentuate, emphasize a little bit that vav a bit more. Okay. V'tzarich lichtov ish berosh dapa ve'et besofa. All right, so this is a big discussion in the halacha. You have to write the word ish. Now this is referring to the Aseres B'nei Haman. So when we have these two columns, right? So it starts out on one side, actually before the first name is the word Ish. Ish is the first name, in the beginning of the row, as we sent out the pictures, or you can look in the Megillah. And then at the end of the row is Ve'et, and then you go back under Ish, and it has all the names, and then Ve'et all the way down on the other side. And the last word to complete the 11 lines would be the word aseret. And right, it's 10 lines because of the 10 names, and the extra two words of ish and aseret, just mathematically, you look at it, you'll see it's 11. So it says that ish has to be at the head or the beginning of the dapa. Usually we translate that as page or the column. The et, and et should be at the end, besofa at the end. So many of us, so it happens to be, it's a big machlokas. If you look it up in the Beis Yosef really says it's referring to the line. It's not referring to the column. It's not referring to the page. It's referring to the line. But it's a this big discussion among the Achronim how to deal with it. And so bottom line, Mi'ikar Adin, it only refers to the line. It does not refer to the whole column. In other words, you are allowed to have a Megillah. Now, let's take a quick step back. How many lines are the Megillahs? You open up a Megillah, you open it up. How many lines are most Megillahs? So I believe the most common Megillah nowadays are 21 lines. 42 used to be extremely common. I'm not sure what's, be a historian to figure out what was always the most common, what period in history or where. But anyways, the common ones were the 11 line one, I mentioned it already. The 11 line Megillah, many people call the Gra Megillah, or it's 11 lines. That's a modern invention, as Rabbi Ruvain Menlowitz put it. It was created after the Vilna Gaon was alive. He himself did not have an 11-line Megillah, even though we call it the Gra Megillah. That was an invention that came after him. But we see earlier, one of the most popular opinions is 42 was a big number. But again, none of the numbers of lines are me'akev. There's no halacha how many lines a Megillah must be. Whatever you do, it's all kosher. He says in early Rishonim you see many times they had even a 6-line. But anyways, the common ones are, 11 is somewhat common nowadays, but it's certainly not the most common. 21 I think is the most common. 42 is a common one in history. 28, and then also some people have a Megillah we call the Hamelech HaMegillah, where you make it so that the word Hamelech is the first word on every column. When you write the Megillah, so every column, the first word should be Hamelech. So if you try and do it yourself, it's not going to work very well. But obviously you can find a printed one, and it's all been made exactly so that the letters are spaced out and everything is spaced out, so everything looks nice and normal. Let's see. Okay, so how does that relate to this? In order to get, so there is basically two main opinions. Does it mean, as we kind of just said, ish and ve'et, is that only referring to the beginning and the end of the line, or the beginning or the end of the column? So the way most Megillahs are now done nowadays, it's 21 lines, and we make ish at the beginning of the column at the top, and we make aseret at the bottom of the column at the end. Now, it's only 11 names, right? Or 10 names plus the one, and you're using a 21 Megillah. So the only way to make that work is to make all the letters for the names much bigger than the rest of the Megillah. So that's why it looks much bigger. The Gra was against that because there's no Masorah for it to be bigger, but that is the minhag in Klal Yisrael that's also accepted lechatchila. But some say it's better. It's a whole machloket. Some say it's better not to have a 21. It's better to have. It's not better not to do it like that. Just have the last 11 lines of that whole column. It could be 21, it could be 42, whatever. The last 11 should be that one. So it could end off at least with aseret. But really, halachically, you could also have it end off anywhere in the middle. And then just have all the names the same size as the rest of the Megillah. It should all look the same. So those are the two main opinions. And the reason why there's an opinion to try and do, or a modern invention of doing an 11, and I don't know how far back it goes, but the idea of doing an 11 line is you're able to try and make everybody happy, where it's 11 lines and all the word, and so it fits. You have the entire column just of the names, and they can all be the same size as all the other letters in the Megillah. There is a major problem though, and I don't think this is discussed over here. There's something called the Gilyon. The Gilyon is the empty space on a Megillah, when you read, or a Sefer Torah. You have the letters in the middle, and then you have the margins. Right? In English we call them margins. There's the blank margins on the bottom and the blank margins on the top. So by a Sefer Torah, what's it supposed to be? You remember the numbers 2, 3, and 4. 2 is in between the columns. 2 etzba'ot. The minimum would be 4 centimeters. 3 etzba'ot on the top, and 4 etzba'ot on the bottom. And so that's like 6 centimeters on top and 8 centimeters on the bottom. Again, it depends what shita you go with, but that's like the minimum. Now, the other halacha is, and that's something that also is only a mitzvah min a muvchar, both by Sefer Torah and kol shekain by a Megillah. The question is, does even Megillah need that? So that's, for a Sefer Torah, we try very hard to do that. That's the way to write it, lechatchila, but it's really mitzvah min a muvchar. It doesn't turn your Sefer Torah into a B'diavad Sefer Torah. It's just lachatchila, you shouldn't do it that way. And by chumashim, the number is 1, 2, and 3. So that's 2 etzbot on top and 3 etzbot on the bottom. So there's a machloket. What should the Megillah be like? And again, it's all a mitzvah min a muvchar, but in order to get this space, the minimum space that you want lechatchila, and if you're only writing 11 columns, it's not very big. 11 column. And the problem is, the ktav in the middle is a halacha. Again, it's also the mitzvah min ha-mukhar. The ktav in the middle is supposed to be more than the margins, or the gillions on the top and bottom. So it's a little hard to make everything work all together unless you will use bigger letters. And anyway, so that explains also why doing an 11-line Megillah, you might lose important hidurim, or it's also going to be a lot more expensive. Okay, let's continue to Hey. I think that went over all that. Okay, Hey. Im tfara b'chutei pishtan psula. Now, you have all the yeriot, all the parchments. Right? You have a few amudim, columns in each parchment. Now, you have to connect them. How do you connect them? It must be continuous. It has to all be connected, or you have scattered parchments, and that's puzzle. If you connect them with only pishtan, flax, that's also psula. Okay, it must be from a kosher animal, the gidim of a kosher animal. So vav, that leads us right into vav. If you did 3 chutei gidim, you're kosher. Ubilvad shiyu meshulashot. As long as they are meshulashot. What does meshulashot mean? It's a very good question. The Rishonim argue what that means. So, well, first let me just explain. A Sefer Torah, I sent out a picture. Lechatchila, the way a Sefer Torah is written, it's supposed to be connected from the top all the way to the bottom. We're going to see not the super very top and not the super very bottom, but basically the entire length from top to bottom. It should be sewn in and out with the gidim. That's the halacha by a Sefer Torah. Again, it doesn't make it psula b'diavad, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, so the halacha, so the Gemara says a Megillah is like a sefer that it needs to have gidim ksherim, but it's called an igeret. It doesn't have the same halacha of a Sefer Torah, that it doesn't need the stitches of gidim all the way down. What's the minimum? It's meshulashot, and then that's good enough. It's meant as a kula. So you can make your Megillah the lechatchila way, meshulashot, which is also lechatchila for a Megillah, or you can make it even more, all the way from top to bottom, like a Sefer Torah. That's obviously better. So again, people all talk about hidurim, mitzvah min ha-mukhar, so some things are important, some things are less important, or more important, less important, and it doesn't turn it into a b'diavad sefer that you try not to use. So anyways, so that's the difference. Now, what does it mean, meshulashim? In order to be yotzei all the perushim of minimal mitzvah min ha-mukhar lechatchila for a Megillah, then you want to do, you have to be yotzei there's 3 main opinions in the Rishonim. It's mentioned in the Bir Halacha. I sent out a little graph or an illustration of how it is. So is it in here? Well, let's read. He's going to say, the Shulchan Aruch is going to say how to do it, so you're Makayim the 3 main shitas. Let's say Rashi, Rif, and Rambam, for example. So V'yaseh shlosha tfirot berosha, u'shlosha besofa, u'shlosha be'emtza'ita. Okay, so again, we're doing this as a kula. You don't go all the way down. So what do? Or you only have a little bit of gid on hand, and so you want to be use as minimal as possible. So you do 3 little stitches on the top, 3 little stitches in the middle, and 3 little stitches at the very bottom, almost at the very bottom. Utefira achas bechelek harevi mitzad zeh, utefira achas bechelek harevi shemitzad ha'acher. And then you put 1 single stitch, basically 25% down. So that you divide it in 3 spots, so it turns into you get 4 equal spots, and that's where you put your tfiros. And I think the diagram explains how you yotzei all the shitas. Basically, just in real quick, one requires just 3. 2 opinions only require 3 stitches, but they require them in different spots, either at the very top, at the middle, at the very bottom, or at the 25% mark, the 50% mark, and the 75% mark. And the Rambam picks one of them and says, well, you have to do not just, when it says meshulashot, not just 3 places, but 3 little stitches by each one. Okay, Haga. V'im ein lo gidin yoter And if you don't have any more gidin, mutav litfor nishar b'chutei pishtan milanichol bilot tfira. And if you don't have any more, it's better to, if you want to add to that, then use pishtan. But if you have enough, you can stitch it all up with gidin. And the stitching, you see it from the outside, from the back side, not from the front. Okay, zayin. Tzarich lehaniach shiur berosh hayiriya v'sofa kishetofrim yachad uvemashuhu sagi. Okay, so when you start the stitching at the top and on the bottom, don't start from the very, very top and the very, very bottom. Just start from close to the top and close to the bottom, and even a mashuhu is enough. We're afraid that if you do it to the very top, it's easier to rip, because you need a little bit of give when you're moving it, or it's getting rolled, or you're touching it, or you bend it. So it's less likely to rip if it has some give at the ends. Okay. Oh, and also one of the reasons of having a gilyon that's given does make it look nicer, but also one of the main reasons it's given is because it's the part that people are often touching, and you don't want that to get smudged when people are touching it. You want the ktav to be nicer. So that's the reason given for that. Zayin, no, chet. Ein korin b'tzibur b'Megillah ktuva bein aktuvim. If you have a Megillah that's written among the ktuvim. In other words, you have a scroll, and it's got a whole bunch of ktuvim all written, like one big book. Like you have a Tanakh, it's all written on parchment, and it's all written, and it's just really long, and it has all the Megillahs in there, or ktuvim, it could have Tehillim in there. It's all one long scroll. So if it's all on the same level, the parchment all looks the same, then and you read it in Sibor, you're not Yotze. Lo Yatza. Elim ken aita yetera al she'ar hayirios o chaseros. Kadei shehela heker. In the scroll of the Megillah, the parchment needs to be a little bit taller or shorter, so that it looks different than the rest. Because we want the Megillah, part of the Persumei Nisa is to show that it's a scroll, to show that the Megillah Sylvester, we want it to be more obvious, that it's not just a book from Chumash or Tanakh, this is Megillah Esther over here. But if a person reads it on his own, right, not b'tzibur, then it's okay. You don't have to worry about it. It's a halacha that was instituted, but it's not mi'akev for a yachid. V'davka kishehi k'tuva b'gilyon k'sefer Torah. But it still has to be written like a Sefer Torah on parchment. Even if you read it alone, you can't just open up an Art Scroll Chumash or Oz V'Hadar Chumash and read it. You still need kosher Megillah. Okay, and that's all part of Persumei Nisa. Okay, Moshe Bura points out, anytime you have a minyan, that's called a tzibur. It doesn't matter if you're in your house or in shul. It needs to be, if you have a minyan, you have to have a separate scroll, or it has to look different. Okay. Tet. Megillah shehi nakuda. If you have a Megillah with nakudos, is that kosher? So, v'chein im kataba b'daf harishon brachos u'piyutim. Or you have a Megillah, and you have the brachos on it, and you have piyutim on it. Eina nifselet bekach. It's not pasal. Nakudos makes it pasal for a Sefer Torah, but it doesn't make it pasal, right? Another difference. Here, by a Megillah, the halacha is it's not pasal. If a person read a Megillah with nakudos, you're Yotze. If a person read a Megillah with Te'amim and the brachot, you're Yotze, and you would still make a bracha on it. It's a kosher Megillah. It's just better not to. And there happens to be a discussion. What happens if you don't know how to read a Megillah with the proper Te'amim? You can just read it without nakudos, or you don't know it with the Te'amim. Should you just quickly put in some Te'amim in there, write it with some pencil or dio or whatever, and write it in there, and this way you'll do a much better reading for the tzibur. So it seems like from the Mishnah Bura, it's better to put in the notes so you can do a better reading job. But the Aruch Shulchan says certainly not. You're Yotze, but we don't do that to our Megillahs, and it's better to read it without the Te'amim than to put in the notes So everyone should ask his own Rav, which is lechatchila for the tzibur. Okay. What else? Yud. Im ein Megillah kshera korim ota b'chumash b'lo bracha. Now, if you don't have a kosher Megillah, so then it's better to read it from a chumash than not to read it. Because at least you're learning the story, you're Mekayim, something. If you're Yotzei or not, that's a big discussion, but at least you're involved in the story. So it's better to read it than not to read it, but you certainly do not say a bracha. Okay? Im kara Megillah gzula yatsa. Now, if you read a Megillah from a stolen Megillah, so then again, you're Yotzei. Because the Megillah itself is it's a finished product, and you're not getting mitzvahs lav lehenas nisnu. You're reading it not to get benefit, you're reading it to be Yotzei the mitzvah. So, okay, let's read the Haggah. V'mevarchin alea ayin el siman tafresh memtet l'inyan lulav hapasel v'hu adin kan. So what does he say over there? But you do not say the bracha. There by lulav. If you take a stolen lulav, you could be yotzei. Even if you do a shinoi on it, you could be yotzei, but you still don't say a bracha because it's ma'us. It's disgusting that you're doing a mitzvahs with something stolen. That's it's the antithesis of what it means to be Jewish and following halacha. Okay. Okay. Should we stop? Or do a bit more? Do a couple lines. Tafresh Tzadi Beit. Dinei Berachos Megillah. Hakoyed the Megillah Mevarech Lefanei Shalosh Brachot Al Mikra Megillah V'Sha'asa Nisim V'Shehechiyanu. Okay. So this is the halachas of brachos we're starting. And a person reads, we all know that there's 3 brachos before. Those are all chiyuvim for us. L'chatchila, we're supposed to say the brachos beforehand. It's a birkas ha-mitzvah and then shevach. Okay? Ubayom eino chozer umevarich shechianu. But at the daytime, you don't repeat shechianu because you already said it at night. So that's the minhag by the Sfardim. The Sfardim don't say shechianu twice. And there's also an inyan to have in mind, whenever mitzvah you say, have in mind, when you say shechianu, it's for the other mitzvahs of the day as well. Okay? It's a question if you need to, if you're really accomplishing anything, but that's the minhag that we try and, we say shechianu, we have it on all, but shechianu is only established for mikra Megillah, and certainly not for any of the other brachos. So if you can't have a Megillah and you still are going to do Mishalach Manos, everyone says you do not say shechianu. V'yesh omrim sh'af bayom mevarach shechianu. And here the Ramah says no, and that's the minhag of Ashkenazim, as we say shechianu also during the day. V'chenoagim mechol medinos elu, and that's the minhag for everyone. V'yachad yochol levarach v'sheni kori. And anyone can say the brachos, and anyone can read it. And there's whoever. You can have the person like we do by Kriyas Torah. One person can read, and one person can say the brachos, because everyone's being yotzei from each other, and that's fine. Uliachareha nohagim levarich haravat rivenu. Then there's a later minhag it's already in the Gemara. It's a minhag if you say Chazal made this bracha, but it wasn't obligatory. It's not a chiyuv, and it's a minhag. But we all have the minhag. Every kehila has a minhag to say this last bracha. There's 2 ideas at the end. Hanifra alanu miYisrael harav Mashiach, something like that. It's from 2 different customs. We use them both. That's the Papa, the Gemara. And the post can point out it's really all one inyan. Whenever you say a bracha, it's always supposed to be just one inyan. And those 2 things, if Hashem doesn't take care of our enemies, then we can't be saved. It's all really hainu hach. And we should have the Yeshua now as well. Im lo birech lo lefanea v'lo le'achareya yatsa. And the brachos eina me'akvos hagav v'nagu lomar b'layla asher heini avalo bayom. So there's a nusach, a piyut. We say it at night. We don't have to say it again twice. Once is enough. Ve'im levarech achareya ela b'tzibur. Now this bracha of Aravid Rivenu, we only say it b'tzibur. In other words, when there is a minyan. Now there is an opinion that says it even b'yachid, but the halacha is only b'tzibur. The same halacha for Ashkenazim and Sfardim. What happens if you have a women's minyan? 10 women are reading the Megillah and they're reading for each other. So the halacha is, do they say the bracha or not? So two opinions. Chazon Ovadia and Mikrai Kodesh, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank say, of course they say the bracha. Because they're also part of the mitzvah, and they're also part of Pirsumei Nisa. So of course they should say the bracha, and there's a Pirsum Nisa with 10 women, but again, that is a debatable issue on some level. Well, it was really debated more by the account for a minyan for a similar halacha. Anyways, we did that before. So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Orach Chaim Kanievsky say a woman's minyan does not say the last bracha at the end, only if you have 10 men. So machlokas. Okay.